listening to the Astral Hour. I'm your host, Astral Meadow. Join me as we take a glimpse into the mysterious. Welcome, everyone. Today, I'm joined with my friend Amanda Mary. She studies esoteric American herbalism and currently lives on a sailboat in South Florida. She is dedicated to preserving knowledge of American plants and hopes to become a resource for boaters and travelers looking to use more bioregional plants during their travels. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on and stepping up when I had a guest cancel. And
oh, you're welcome.
yeah, it means a lot. This has been on my list, having like plant medicine or herbalism since the beginning, like when I wrote out all the things I wanted to cover, and I haven't had a great person to do that topic with yet. So when you volunteered, I was like, yes, we need this. So it's like somehow it was like divine timing or something. I think we just all needed maybe a crash course on herbalism this week. So, all right. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your spiritual journey?
Yeah, so I'm I used to live on a homestead in Tennessee, and then COVID happened, and so we decided to sell our homestead, and that's really where I started my herbalism. And we bought a sailboat, and so we're currently in South Florida, and we bought an antique, but she's really solid and easier for us to work on. And she's already been around the world 5 times, so we know she can do the job.
Right.
And so I've been studying down here, and I study the more esoteric practices of American herbalism. And so that's really my personal term for traditional Western herbalism, Southern folk medicine, and Native American herbalism. It's just easier to say esoteric American herbalism.
Right.
But truly this is been a personal journey for me, because I had 2 extremely premature children that were very sickly. And while Western medicine was able to stabilize them, they couldn't really heal them. And I saw the power of just plants and diet with my own eyes. And both of my children are now extremely healthy, very tall. They're both boys, so they're getting taller than me. But I'm noticing now that plants are starting to speak to me more, and which is more related to how Native Americans learned plants. So I know I had a dream when everybody was really concerned about 5G and talking about it and trying to learn more about it. What is this? Is it going to harm us? And so I was digging really deep into it too. And one night I had a dream that this woman came to me, and she said, you need to anoint yourself in rosemary to protect yourself from invisible technologies.
Oh, wow.
So I looked up rosemary. There is a study out there that says rosemary protects you from like radiation, and we know 5G is the first generation that can actually permeate the skin. So I started giving rosemary tincture out to people in a spray bottle and telling people spray it under your tongue for focus. I didn't really say, hey, I'm this crazy woman that believes 5G might be harmful.
Right. For sure.
But yeah, that was pretty trippy to have a dream like that. And I know I had one other dream that I'm still trying to figure out. And in it, a man told me I needed to remember my Indian roots. And my family on both sides has been in the U.S. for over 400 years. So we've just been here forever. And we know we have Native American ancestors, but we can't find the paper trail. It's just like we'll find their first name, but there's no last name, which is really common because those old scrolls, people would have like an Americanized first name and a Native American last name, and people had a hard time remembering that stuff. So on the official paperwork, you'll just see the first name. So that part's a little frustrating.
For sure. But you can trust that it's there.
Yeah. And I feel like that was maybe the dream was more about remembering how they use the plants, which is energetically instead of scientifically. And it does seem to work better that way.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So,
Yeah, I've had some really great experiences with herbal medicine too. Um, I feel like it's just I'm always learning new things. I can only focus on like one plant at a time because I'll start getting overwhelmed. So I keep like a
yeah.
journal, and if a plant starts coming up, a lot, like I start seeing it or like people are posting about it or whatever it is, like it's blooming. I'll in my journal, I'll create a whole section just for that one plant. And this is moving very slowly, but I am, trying to like not just study the plant scientifically, but like how the plant makes me feel and like
Yeah.
meditating. And that's something I've been encouraging people in our program to do is like actually spend time with the plant. We started with like the meditating with crystals and then, slowly moving to plants and like how does this plant make you feel when you're next to it? Like does these things come up for you when you're around this plant, like smelling the plant, touching, and just really getting to know it in a more familiar way than just, dandelion root does this.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's been really cool for me. And I really appreciate people that are teaching herbalism and like learning it all so that they can help us organize it. Cause I think so many people are into it, but it gets a little overwhelming.
It can. And it can people don't realize it can be very specific to like personality types or what you're
Hmm.
currently going through. And it's not just the physical symptoms that are occurring. And that makes the medicine work better when you match it to a personality profile.
For sure.
I learned from my clients too, because some of them are very, very intuitive, and so I have a couple of different processes to test plants and see if it's right for that person.
Mhm.
And we'll be in the middle of testing and they'll tell me exactly where they feel it in their body. And I'm like amazed because I'm like, well, I've only seen that written down. And now this is like confirmation for me that it really does work that way.
Right. That's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, people that are more sensitive, I feel like it's probably a little bit easier to work with them because you're like, well, that's definitely what I was looking for, that
Yep.
symptom, that spot. So yeah, that's really cool. I feel like just a little bit on homeopathy helped me look at like the energetics a little bit more of like the whole person. And I know that
Yeah.
homeopathy is different than herbalism, but just like looking up all the weird things that go with like this one specific energy. And it's not just about like the back pain. It's like, how are you
Mhm.
emotionally and, your childhood trauma and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
it really does. It changes us, and,
Yeah, it does.
it creates a specific energy and the plants from what I've learned, like have their own energies too. So just because there could be like 10 plants that specialize with like congestion, but then there's 10 different types of people and 10 different types of plants for that specific thing. And it's also unique. And I feel like working with an herbalist, like you're getting that whole wealth of knowledge. Like they've studied so much with all the different varieties. It's me Googling it doesn't work. I like when it comes to herbal remedies, I always seek help, from a specialist because they've done the work. They know how this interacts with that. And it's just very valuable information. So,
Yeah, I with homeopathy, yeah, they tend to take on more symptoms than an herbalist will. An herbalist will break it
mhm.
down a little bit more. Like, well, let's deal with these major systems, clear it up, and then we'll come back and deal with the more minor stuff. And whereas they try to deal with the whole thing all at once, sometimes they nail it, and it's amazing when they nail it. And then other times people start getting frustrated because it is difficult.
Right.
Yeah, it's difficult to be a homeopathist, and herbalism works. It does, that we have our own sets of rules and our own sets of laws and how those things work. And there's also more room for creativity and for being more spiritual and spiritually connected to the plants. And I
Right.
feel like homeopathy, I mean, it's more scientific, but its own science. It's not like Western science.
Right. Right. For sure. I utilize both herbalism and homeopathy for different
Yeah.
things. I like because I might like ask for a consult with you after this for some like hormonal stuff. And I worked with a homeopath for a year and it's just like you know, it's just not getting to the root of it for me. So I'm like, maybe I do need something more regular than just taking a dose every few months or something, um, of something.
Yeah, usually with female problems, we suggest taking, the suggested remedies for 3 months. And
Okay.
because your symptoms might clear up, within a couple of days or a week or two, but you need to retrain your body, and that's the whole point of taking it for 3 months. And then like everything's fixed. So we also have to warn women, you're like super fertile right now, so be very careful.
Right. That's good to know. That's good to know. I'm excited to maybe work with you with that because it has been very frustrating um to deal with that. But as far as like these little things that come up, I can like Google a remedy and it does work for things that are like sudden for me, like a
Okay.
headache. But then
Yeah.
like some of this more chronic stuff like I'm struggling with, that's where I'm like, I need the plan. I want to work through this and actively participate in my healing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, your belief systems also play a big role. And
Hmm.
I discovered that during COVID because I'm one of those people. I completely dropped germ theory. I don't even look at it anymore because I spent many years, and I mean like a decade, reading all of the literature on it.
Hmm.
And so I'm still a layman, right? I don't have a degree in it, but I did shift more towards like terrain theory and German new medicine, and their ways of thinking, and obviously our more native ways of thinking about herbs. And we didn't get sick once during that whole time. We didn't take any precautions. We lived very normally. Me, my children, my husband, not a sniffle, nothing.
Right.
And the people that strongly believed in the virus, I noticed that they were getting sicker. And
Hmm.
so that made me realize, okay, the power of belief and what you believe is happening inside your body very strongly affects the outcome. So I don't lecture my clients, well, this is my belief system. You need to believe this way too.
Right.
But so, I accept I believe you because, they're telling me what's happening in their body. And many times I learn like new correlations that I didn't realize before. So they'll say this started during this time. Oh, and then I'll find like a correlation because I start seeing patterns in other clients.
Right.
So and that's what's most important.
Right. I feel like a lot of people forget, we study like the placebo effect, but it's not just like taking a sugar pill. It's like what you think. So if you really believe you're going to get a virus and it's going to do this list of things, if you really believe that, that's sort of like working with that same energy of like the placebo effect. You're
Yeah.
putting a lot into it and that belief can actually cause you to have symptoms.
Yeah, I believe it's called the nocebo effect.
Nocebo. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, and then if you believe there's no cure for your particular ailment, then like there's nobody can help you. No herbalist, no homeopath, just nobody. And so there is a flower essence called walnut flower essence that
hmm
helps you break those those patterns and helps you break bad habits and helps you break that bond of, oh, I cannot ever be cured. So you could think of it like breaking bad habits.
Right. That's awesome. Do
Yeah.
you do flower essences a little too, or?
Just a little bit. I mostly stick with herbs, tinctures mostly.
Uh-huh.
But some herbs just work better more as a food. So I tell them to drink it as a tea or mix it in their soup or something. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, mostly tinctures.
Okay, cool. All right. So could you give us a little bit of background on the American herbalism and how it differs from some of the other types of herbalism?
Yeah, so our most of our knowledge actually comes from the Native Americans and early midwives. Sorry.
Okay.
So the midwives were just picking it up from all over the place. Native Americans, the Irish, the African Americans. So it's really its own culture ended up forming, and we are the first documented tradition to actually use drop dosing. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where you use between maybe 1 to 5. Some herbs need 10 drops, instead of doing big dropper pools like the Europeans do and other traditions do. And that by doing drop dosing, you find out like a small drop of, like, let's say you're working with wild lettuce, a small drop will actually calm a racing mind. Just one, between 1 to 5 drops. I'll take like 3 drops before I meditate, just to settle it down, because I have a very airy constitution.
Me too.
And but if you take a really big dose, like say, 2 dropperfuls, that'll help with pain, and um and it'll help you go to sleep.
Okay. That's interesting. So the big difference is like the type of dosing, and is there any difference in like the way that they create the tinctures or anything, or is that basically all the same? Or
That's basically the same. That's pretty standardized. There is we do have, where the traditional Western herbalism is the only one that I'm aware of that uses tissue states. And so that's where you actually physically look at the tissue and you can see that it's hot, cold, wet, dry. And which it really is very similar to the energetics of other traditions, where they use earth, fire, air, water, kind of like an airbender.
like
But
Ayurveda kind of.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and there are our constitutions, we break them down into 3, but it so closely aligns with the constitutions of Ayurveda that
Mm-hmm.
most Western herbalists will say Vata, Pitta, Kapha, because it's so much easier to say than endomorphic, you know. I
Right.
mean, those words are still used in our medical literature, um,
Okay.
in Western medicine, but I think most people have forgotten that its roots actually comes from our herbalism, traditional Western herbalism.
Okay. Yeah, I think like in America, like when you look up stuff, you always want to go to like Chinese medicine or, like the Ayurveda, but it's like we've forgotten that we have our own, special plants here,
Yeah,
and
we
like we
do.
have our own history. And I feel like, it's not really taught. So it's like in a way almost disempowering us because we feel like we have to go outside of our own country, maybe even to study
Yeah.
healing. But
Yeah,
really
that's
there's a
totally true.
yeah, we are like full of medicine,
Hmm.
all over the place. So,
We actually have more remedies for female health issues than any other tradition in the world. And I feel like that actually comes from the Native Americans, because they honored their women more than other
oh
traditions
wow.
ever did.
That
Yeah,
just gave
so
me chills.
yeah. There's we there's so many herbs that it's specific for women, and nobody else. Nothing else.
Well, that's where I've got a lot of the issues for myself. So I'm very lucky that there's healing there. So,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's definitely healing there for sure.
yeah.
Um, which is a good segue into one of the herbs that I wanted to talk about today is
Okay.
false unicorn root. And so
Okay.
that one's actually a southern plant, and so you find it up in the Green Mountains. It it's actually more common and easier to find than unicorn root, but they both have very similar properties, and so many herbalists consider them interchangeable.
Okay.
But that one is very, very gentle. It was used by the natives for a very long time. They still use it. And so it's very all encompassing. So if you have amenorrhea, which is where your period of stop or is very scanty, or if you're just bleeding too heavily, or you get like a lot of inflammation and bloating, it's very good for just normalizing the human female reproductive system. But it's also it's very gentle, and it's very slow. So it's usually paired with another herb.
Mm-hmm.
So you knock out what are the big major symptoms, and you choose the herb for that and the person's constitution, and then you would pair it with false unicorn root, and that makes like a more complete picture.
Okay. So when you mix it with something else, that kind of makes, I don't know, adds to the energy a little bit, or maybe makes it work
Yeah, yeah.
quicker,
So
or
it makes the herbs very individualized for that person. So we're
right.
not, it's not, I don't really like going off of formulas. I know that's very popular now, and that's what everybody wants.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good for beginners. It really is, because you're not fully understanding why are these herbs all being mixed together.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you decide you want to be a master, then you start learning how to make those combinations for your clients.
All right. So it's kind of like an art form at that point where
Yeah.
you're blending and mixing, or even like it made me think of astrology, like when things are conjunct and now they're blended and it creates a whole new energy
Oh,
that's very like specific to the person with that conjunction. It's, so it's different than having something, three houses apart versus having them 0 degrees or something. So yeah, I think about though the conjunctions all the time when I'm like blending paint. And I'm like,
oh,
when I see that in someone's chart, I'm like closing my eyes. I'm like, what would these two energies look like mixed together? And then how does that shift based on if, these other planets were together, So
yeah.
it takes like a lot of meditation and just you have to be a little creative, and I feel like as an herbalist, that intuition and then that creativity comes into play, and now you have a really special formula
Yeah.
for a person, that might be totally different than someone that has a very similar symptoms, but like a different personality or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I didn't write down blue vervain on the list I sent you, but that one is very specific for personality types because it's very relaxing. So you give it to somebody who maybe has TMJ or like neck issues or,
Hmm.
because if you can relax the muscles, oftentimes that can cause the pain to go away. So there's no pain relieving. Um, you, there's nothing in it that relieves pain. It's just causing you to relax, and that
Hmm.
just that act alone can make the pain go away. But it's very specific to personality profiles. So these are like type A personalities, they're kind
Hmm.
of wound up already and their muscles are always clenched up and
Like this is about me, isn't it? I'm just kidding. When I was looking at some of the herbs, I was looking at that one and I was like, oh my gosh, I think this might be it. Because I was like, I'm gonna get with her and tell her I'm been really stressed, I'm really tense. My neck is like always tight. I had a trampoline accident a couple years ago.
oh no.
And it was just I did a flip and my neck got jerked around,
Oh.
and which is kind of like a whiplash thing.
Mm-hmm.
And now if I eat any kind of inflammatory foods at all, my neck will tense up. And
Oh
so I was like, I
wow.
need to message her about that. I've been thinking, I'm like, maybe I need to get a tuning fork or so. I'm like, I just need to relax it because like it really does all kind of start there. Definitely have TMJ and all of that. So I feel like that whole
Okay.
remedy sounds like me. I'm very, I guess, type A too, where I'm like, I just need to be able to relax and, not
Yeah.
take so seriously all the time. And
Yeah, it's difficult for type A to relax because you feel like you have to be busy, you have to be doing something. If you're unproductive, you're wasting your time. It's hard to just whew, calm down. No, I get it
right.
because I can be very type A.
Yes,
Yeah.
these metaphysical practices have helped me so much with that because I just, it's almost impossible. Like if I don't have some kind of outside help, whether it's a plant or some yoga or meditation or whatever, if I'm just out here on my own, I'm a spaz. The practices really help. And the plant medicines are so just comforting to me. I've utilized some different things. And I wasn't even aware of just how deep the plants can go. Like when I lost my father, I worked with someone that really helped with, and she had created this thing for grief. And it really did help me process and I was like, I didn't even think about plants doing this.
Yeah.
But before I took that remedy, I could barely even talk about it. And I was
Hmm.
just breaking down. And it's not that it took the grief away, but it was like
Yeah, you
something
never want
about the
to.
plants like made me feel like held. And like when I lost him, I felt like I kind of lost my whole support system. And I was like, I just really need a hug. And so there was I don't know everything that was in it. I feel like it probably had like motherwort or something like that in it.
Yeah, that one's a really good one.
Yeah, and it really did. It sort of was like initiated like that next phase after grief. Because I mean, it's not like the grief ever stopped, but I was finally able to just, accept it. It's like I didn't even accept it until I took the herbs. So
Yeah.
it was really good. And I think some people forget, they think, oh, I have to have like a physical symptom for plants to help me. But
Hmm.
sometimes it is emotional.
Yeah. Oh no,
So,
I deal with mental health. I studied under I mean, this man has not written a book and he needs to, but he teaches classes. He's written books on like Irish um practices, which I have bought. But he's, I think, probably the best right now in the field when it comes to mental health and using herbs for it. And his name is Sean O'Donohue.
Okay.
And yeah, I dealt with a case that he kept going to, doctors, and they kept giving him pills and it wasn't working. And so he had, like, his emotions were all over the place, and suicidal thoughts, and and it was really dangerous for him. And the pills would actually make things worse and not better. And so, yeah, I applied what I learned from there, and gave him a specific formula for his symptoms. And within 3 months, he really didn't need it every day anymore. He was seeing people for who they were instead of having anxiety controlled and cloud, his perception of the world. And depression dramatically declined. And I ended up slightly altering the formula, which he now only uses just every once in a while as needed, really. And it was just to clear up some of the more minor issues that we could now see, because the major issues were, toned way down. So I mean, that was really incredible to witness that for me, because you're always told that, oh, mental health, this is permanent, this is who you are, and that goes more back to breaking those habits. But it was more than just, like, if you're dealing with emotions, also correlate to different organ systems. Mm-hmm. So anxiety is really connected to your kidneys, but it's also connected to anger, to the outside world, which a lot of people don't talk about, because usually when they say anger, everybody thinks about the liver.
Right.
And but liver can be more anger towards your family, whether it's in your household or other family members that but that's what I've personally noticed. But yeah, it can be more generalized anger. It's Agrimony is another herb that I wrote down for you.
Yeah.
And it's a good segue into that one. But that one's for, like, unprocessed anger. So the person will have, they're scared to show their feelings because it's very intense. They know it would scare people off. And so they very rarely show that anger, and they have, like, a false cheerfulness about them. So you'll be in a serious situation and they're, like, way too happy for what's going on.
Right.
And that's usually a sign, okay, this person has unexpressed anger, and Agrimony will help them deal with it. And there's usually other signs going on with the liver dysfunction, and the liver it's like the secretary of your body. It does so many things, and it's very complex, and so many systems have to deal with the liver, that we don't think that maybe liver dysfunction is causing a person's anger.
Right. Yeah. It was really profound when I discovered that certain emotions were correlated with the certain organ systems. I was just, like, blown away. And then, like, anytime I have, like, a really intense emotion that might not be something that's, like, regular for me, I'll go look it up, like, what is this correlated with? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I've been having pain in that area or whatever. And it's like the body is and the spirit are, like, constantly trying to have, like, these conversations with us. And it's giving us, like, these little hints, and it might start out as like frustration and then turn into an actual, like, physical thing, but it's like, I feel like in the way, like, the body is just trying to get us to recognize it and say, hey, these emotions are leading to this. And it's like bringing this, is it disharmonic? I don't know if that's a word. It's messing with the harmony, within the body. And anytime it's not, like, in that flow state, and, like, sort of there's, like, these blockages, and then so the energy, like, can't move.
Yeah.
But it's like it's within, like, that organ system, So, like, fear has its own. It's fear of the lungs.
That's grief.
Grief is the lung. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I feel like I definitely had more of, like, asthma and stuff after losing my dad. I developed an insane amount of food allergies.
Oh.
Like 2 weeks after he passed, I became allergic to the top 8 food allergens. And I was like, you can't tell me that grief somehow wasn't correlated. I haven't fully figured it out, but it happened during, like, a traumatic experience, Yeah. And my body responded. So
no, that's totally right. I noticed a correlation in my clients with trauma, like active trauma and mold allergies.
Mm.
And so I, went back to my classes, and, Sean Donahue, he did confirm that, yes, that is a thing. I've never seen this written down anywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and he gave me some pointers on how to deal with that. So because you want to go back and heal the adrenal glands, which traditional herbalists actually view it as part of the kidneys,
Okay.
because it sits like a little cap. It's like a little cap on top of the kidneys.
Right.
But it controls so many of our hormones, stress hormones, and our, sexual reproduction hormones, and inflammatory hormones, and just all of them.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of the time, so it makes sense, because if it's also producing histamines and you're under a lot of stress, so it's also producing cortisol, that all of those symptoms go back to the adrenal glands.
Right. Yeah, I think sometimes we think about just the sex hormones and we forget about all the other hormones that our body is constantly trying to create or regulate or whatever. We get kind of lost, I think, in just thinking estrogen and
Yeah,
testosterone. But there's a lot going on there
yeah,
beyond just those two with like the cortisol and stuff like that.
yeah. I'll tell. I see a lot of women with androgen dominance in their, and they're like, what? Because we weren't learned that. We weren't we weren't taught that in school. And that's a hormone that is used to create other hormones, but it's still produced by the adrenal glands. And so if it produces too much, it has to go through the liver, and that's a really difficult hormone for the liver to break down, that and testosterone, and because they're considered more masculine. And so when your liver is struggling to break down those hormones, then we start getting side effects, because too
Right.
many hormones are floating around in the body.
Right, for sure, for sure. So, let's see. Is there any other herbs that you want to get into?
Yeah. Solomon seal. I got more intimately got to know that herb more intimately recently, because a few weeks ago I actually fractured my wrist, and
Mm.
it's mostly healed right now. There's still a little stiffness in there. But I used comfrey root, pulses, and I drank the tea to heal the bones in there, and it healed it very rapidly. I mean, had I gone to a doctor, I'd still be wearing a cast right now.
Right.
And then, but I felt like once I felt like comfrey root did its job, because it even dealt with the pain, it dealt with the inflammation. It was like amazing. I didn't have to take one pain remedy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but now I've switched to Solomon seal, because my muscles need their strength back, and it's also really good for like the tendons in your hands. It I Shockingly, it helps with pain. I've never seen that written anywhere, but I noticed 10 minutes after I rub it in, it feels better.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's some sort of pain reliever about it, because I'll also suggest it for people with like back issues, like whiplash. It'll be part of the remedy. Um, it's also very healing for the gut. There's a long list of gut issues that it will actually help with. It just repairs them. It's almost magical, really. And we don't have a lot of science on it, because that was one of the herbs that was lost to us for a very long time. And Jim McDonald actually dug it back up when he went and spent time with the Ojibwe natives, which they're up where he is around the Great Lakes, and in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been really spreading it by mouth, and it's just been spreading like wildfire. So you don't really see it in any books. You won't. You can, and now if you do a specific search for Solomon seal, it will come up for you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're typing in symptoms, it doesn't come up for you.
Right. You have to already kind of know what you're seeking to find
Yeah.
information. Is there history on like the name of it being Solomon seal or?
Yeah, so that one is a really old famous herb, that goes back thousands of years,
Mm-hmm.
because the Appalachian Mountains during Pangea lined up with a lot of like Scotland and parts of Africa. And so those mountain ranges are actually all the same. And so we have a lot of plants in common. And so Solomon seal originally became famous over there with that particular name because it does have other nicknames.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you cut the root, it looked kind of like the seal of King Solomon.
Okay.
It has like an inner band in the middle, and there's like a lot of dots. And then when the liquid oozes, it does give that kind of mystical feel to it. And it was said that King Solomon, God gave him a ring to help battle demons, and he
Mm-hmm.
became very famous for that. That's not really written in the Bible, that part, but Christians were very aware of it, of that
Mm-hmm.
tradition. The Hindus are also aware of that tradition, but they use it a little bit differently.
Right.
So yeah, but when you cut it, it is cool to look at it, and you can see it for yourself.
Yeah, I might have to look that up. I was looking for like amulets not too long ago, and I was trying to like figure out how to bring in more like Jupiter energy because I'm very Saturn dominant, and Jupiter's definitely not in like the greatest positions for me. So I was like, maybe when like I'm feeling like I need to bring in more of that good energy of Jupiter, I could wear this pendant. So I started looking into it, and it was like these seals of Solomon and all of this stuff. And I was like, what?
Oh,
I didn't even realize that it was a thing, you know? But apparently a lot of people wear the seals of Solomon for like different like protection or
mhm.
there was like seven, I think, maybe 12 of them that had like different properties. And I was just like, wow, this is a whole rabbit hole.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
was like messaging my friend who is really good with Hebrew, and like I'm like, can you translate all these symbols for me? So yeah,
Oh yeah, that would be interesting. I would like to learn more about that because it's you can see the correlation with the plant because it's for people who feel like they need more protection. And when you
mm-hmm.
look at the plant, so it droops over, and the flowers kind of hang off of it, like underneath, as if the flowers are being protected from the leaves.
Oh,
And that, making those kind of physical correlations with plants to physical elements is called doctrine of signatures.
okay.
So yeah, when you correlate the physical aspects, how the plant looks to what the plant does, it's called doctrine of signatures.
That's interesting. I know that there's some people that like look at you to sort of figure out what's going on. They'll look at your tongue, or they'll
Mm-hmm.
look at like
Yes.
the way you walk. Like I've had someone be like, "Will you go walk for me?" And there's different things about like the physical body, like the way that it's viewed, even like face structure and stuff like that, where you can
Mm-hmm.
actually, it's like helps them, I guess, diagnose or see maybe where the energy might be a little off, right? So I think plants too, they have that same kind of makeup where you could look at the plant, and if you really thought about it, you would say this really looks like that, and it probably corresponds, in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you do any of the physical stuff, or you look at tongues or anything?
I'm very heavily reliant on tongue diagnostics. So I usually I do all of my client consultations through Zoom. So I ask them to send me pictures in advance, but in natural lighting. And so I look at the top, the side, and the underneath, and it lets me know what organs or are unbalanced. And then I can also tell their constitution type just by their tongue. I don't it I'm not as fluent yet with facial diagnostics and neck, but I can
Mm-hmm.
do a little bit. Um,
Right.
so like I know if they're having breakouts like right around here, it's probably estrogen dominance,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. But yeah, I'm definitely stronger with the tongue diagnostics. And I actually, because I'm not able to practice, you do pulse diagnostics through Zoom meetings. I actually have the person do it on themselves to test plants, which I don't know of any other herbalists really doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I'll actually have them like feel their pulse, describe it to me, and I'll give them words too because this is very new for people. So does it feel fast, slow, hard, soft? Just very basic words. And
Mm-hmm.
then I'll have them write down on a piece of paper the plant, And so then they'll hold the plant, and then they feel their pulse again, and then they'll let me know how that feels to them. And a lot of people also get physical sensations. Sometimes they feel more stressed. Sometimes they
Mm-hmm.
can feel the herb traveling through their body, or they suddenly they relax and they feel better. And all of those are important indications. And that goes back to the energetics of a plant.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing that it can work just by writing on a piece of paper. And some people are so sensitive, all they have to do is write down the piece of paper, stick it in their pocket, and then, and that works for them. It doesn't work for most people. Most people still need to get the tincture.
Right. Yeah, I've had a couple symptoms that will come up here and there, and I'll just sort of think about it. I'm like, what herb would be good for this? I'll go through the list. I might Google some things, and then I feel like just naming it, I'll already start feeling better before I go make the tea. And I've even said it to my husband before. I'm like, it's really weird because my headache already feels it already feels better, and I haven't even started the peppermint tea yet. So it's like something about it, just like acknowledging the plant in itself.
Yeah.
It's like my body's like, oh yeah, she figured it out.
I can stop
Okay.
sending out all these signals now.
Right, right. So that's so cool. I had an acupuncturist one time, and she would always look at my tongue, and she never explained to me what she was doing. So I'd be like, I'm sorry if I didn't brush my tongue good enough today. She's like, I'm not looking at your tongue brushing. So yeah, I didn't realize that there was like so much going on there, but that's super cool that you use that in your practice. So
Yeah, I'm pretty heavily reliant on it because symptoms are because they can match so many different plants. But then if I see like, oh, the kidneys are lit up, I'm like, oh, okay. So that gives me a very firm direction on which way to go.
right.
So,
That's
so
really
anatomy is
cool.
still important.
Right, for sure. And that's, once again, when we were talking about like specific remedies for a specific personality or a specific person, looking at the tongue, that's gonna give you more of that individual insight versus just the symptoms that they might be experiencing. So that makes sense that it would, you know, give you a little bit more of, a view of what's going on internally. So,
Yeah.
all right. So we've talked about some of these other ones. Have we talked about the blue flag iris?
No, and
No.
that one's a really difficult one. You can't buy it on the market. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to go to foragers.
Okay.
And usually local foragers, they're giving you top quality anyway. That's usually where I buy all of my tinctures and herbs
Mm-hmm.
because like tinctures work better when you're working with fresh plants. They're more biochemically active.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Whereas if you go to a big company, they're actually using dried herbs. And that's fine too, because they're also able to get the organic certifications and people feel better going that route.
Right.
It still works, but your medicine will be stronger or your herbs will be stronger if you go with a freshly made tincture decoction.
Mm-hmm.
And so that one you have to go to local foragers for. And I do have a couple on my list. And when I send clients out an email, I give them links on where they can buy herbs, but
Okay.
they're not required to buy it from them there. But blue flag iris is really famous with Native Americans, especially in the North, because that's where it grows out in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And that one works for like leaky gut and a long list of other ones, but it's probably more famous for that one specifically. And it can actually also help with the thyroid. When I look at its profile, it has a lot in common with black walnut because black walnut is also healing for the gut and
Mm-hmm.
for the thyroid. And but that one's a more southern tradition.
Right.
So, but for like leaky gut, I do rely more on iris than for black walnut, and black walnut more for parasites and thyroid issues because it's just so good with thyroid.
Mm-hmm.
And I
So
think
someone
that
that had like a nut allergy could go the other way with the iris.
yes, they could.
Yeah.
I haven't really heard anybody make that correlation, but I notice a lot of commonalities between the two plants, and it's still used by the Native Americans up north. And
Mm-hmm.
it was before the ADA came in during the 50s and decimated herbalism. It was really commonly practiced by herbalists all throughout the country. Everybody knew that plant. It was really sought after.
Mm-hmm. So did that for that particular one, is the whole plant have medicinal properties, or is it just the flower or the root or
Yeah, that one they use the bulb.
the bulb? Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. My daughter's name's Iris, and I've always just felt really drawn to irises, but I've never thought about them having medicinal properties. Obviously, all plants have something, but some of them aren't necessarily for us or whatever. But
Oh yeah, the homeopaths work with a lot of poisons and animals, like Apis is a bee. But it works. And sometimes
right.
there is a couple of homeopathics that I have that I'll recommend just because it's very, very specific. Like
Mhm.
if you wake up with puffy eyes and allergies and stuff, I mean that's Apis.
Right.
That because it mimics a bee sting.
Hmm.
And that, but obviously I do have a lot of allergy remedies that I can recommend to somebody. But if something works, I'm still going to recommend it. Um,
Right.
which is kind of a good segue into Lobelia,
Okay.
because that one makes people nervous. Because when you look it up, it'll say, "Oh, this is poisonous." Same thing with blue flag iris. "Oh, this is poisonous." And what
Hmm.
people really should be saying with both of those herbs is they're emetic. And we for we really lost that that used to be considered a healing modality, and emetic means it causes you to vomit. But sometimes you
Right.
need to vomit, to feel
Hmm.
better. You need to get the bacteria and whatever's putrefying in your guts or poison even and puke it out. And people won't realize that they had a gut issue and that's why they felt so bad, but then they feel amazing and they have all this new energy. So I don't use it in that way because I don't think people would appreciate me saying, "Hey, I need you to go vomit."
Right. Yeah, well, I mean,
But
if
that
you're vomiting, the body's responding. So that is
yeah.
like with homeopathy, all of that's good. Like if you take a remedy and you go vomit, then it's working. Like that's a great sign.
Keep going.
Right? Yes. Oh.
But that one is it used to be very famously used for asthmatics, so it's great at controlling asthma,
Hmm.
anaphylaxis. And that one you really, if you're going to use it, go that route instead of an EpiPen or including with an EpiPen. You need
Hmm.
to find out what your tolerance level is. So you keep taking a little bit and a little bit more and a little bit bigger dose until you puke. And so the dose right before that is your tolerance level.
Right. So you just write down that how much you.
Yeah.
I might look into that because of my food allergies, I've never hit anaphylaxis, but I do carry an EpiPen that I've never had to use. But I just decided to not do the insurance thing anymore because I don't ever go to the doctor, and it was costing like as much as my rent. So it was,
Oh,
it was a big choice. So I'm like, I still carry the EpiPens because I think they take a while to expire. But I'm like, it would be nice to have an herbal thing, as like just to have on hand, or just to feel because it is an energy. So I feel like if I just know that I'm supported, I won't ever go into anaphylaxis. Because I've just never had it happen. Most of my allergies are like more mild. But I did have a doctor and she was basically like, yeah, you could just even if you've never went into anaphylaxis ever in your life, you could just always it could happen at any point. And that was like really fearful for me. So obviously fear is not a good thing for the body. So I carry the
no.
EpiPen just so that the fear is in check, even though I don't think I'll ever need it. But you know, that's cool that there is plant medicine for that, because some of those EpiPens are really expensive without the insurance.
Yes. And it's actually based on a flower from Chinese medicine, but our government has banned it from our use. So
Mm,
you actually have to go outside the country to get that herb.
right, yeah.
Um, and it's because, and it kind of goes back to, if you take too much, you actually, that one's one of the ones that you really can hurt yourself with, because it
Right.
does, EpiPens give you that big boost of adrenaline.
Right. I mean, you can die from using an EpiPen. I mean,
Yeah.
because you can have a heart attack. So, I mean, like, there's danger with pharmaceuticals too. I think people kind of forget that. Yeah, there might be a couple plants that are dangerous with certain amounts, but it's the same with pharmaceuticals, you know. Too much of anything is not great.
No, no. A lot of these herbs are misrepresented online too.
Mm-hmm.
And I really feel like, it's important to seek an herbalist and have them
Mm-hmm.
guide you on how it's going to work best for your body. Because so many things are labeled poisonous. Like bitter melon is labeled poisonous. But that
Right.
one's great for diabetics, especially if their medication is not working for them. Obviously, if it's working for them, I don't touch that area. I just let
Right.
them be.
For sure.
But yeah, if they're diabetes is out of control and it's not controlled at all, then I'll recommend bitter melon, but I have to walk them through it because I
Right.
I can't have their levels dropping too quickly. I have to make sure they're testing often, they're in communication with their doctor, and all
Mm-hmm.
of those things are very important.
Right. And then checking back in with you. I feel like sometimes that is more important. You know, you diagnose or whatever, you help them find the plant, but then you want to check back in a little bit and make sure that they're still doing well with it. And if they've had like new symptoms or something. Anytime I've worked with an herbalist, I'm like, if I have anything come up, I'm like messaging them like I'm not trying to be a spaz, but this is a new symptom. I just want to make sure that this is normal. So like you got like don't want to like, feel like a hypochondriac, but it is important to reach out because I'm not an
Yeah.
expert, so I'm like,
Yeah, I had some clients are so sensitive. Usually, like Solomon seal, if you take a big dose, it's actually technically also anti-parasitic.
hmm,
But I was just having, because I could tell that her body was just so overwhelmed, and I'm trying to ease her into the herbs. And so I just said, well, let's start with 3 drops. And so she started it, and no, it wasn't Solomon seal. I'm so sorry. It was golden seal.
okay. One of the seals.
Yeah, it was actually golden seal. So I said, well, just start with 3 drops, and we're just gonna ease into it because that's a really powerful plant too.
Hmm.
And so she messaged me 2 days later after starting. She said, I'm pooping out parasites. I'm like, whoa.
Right.
Usually you need a bigger dose for that. She was just really sensitive. But no, I confirmed that, okay, well, that's normal, but now we need to add in a binder for you because we want to make sure your body's getting cleaned up properly.
Right. Yeah, I'm very sensitive to herbs. Like I always start with like a smaller dose because like sometimes that's all I need, But I did a parasite cleanse and normally she might do a full dropper. I think I started with like 3 to 5 drops and I was like, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Like, but apparently sometimes when you attack them, they create like havoc within you and it
Mm-hmm.
really messed with me emotionally. Okay, so it was
Yeah.
like all this I feel like I was like more aggressive, but like it was like an internal aggression and I could feel them. Like these living
Yeah.
things inside of me were pissed at me. And so it was a really hard, battle. And I call it a battle because it was like a year of my life that I was doing these cleanses on and off with an
Uh-huh.
herbalist.
Yeah.
And I'm, I feel great now, but anytime we would start again, I would be like, "Oh no, I don't want to do this." So, but I had read like links with parasites even in cancer over time, and like tumors and like some of the fungal stuff and the parasite, like it was all kind of like going hand in hand. And a lot of the people in the parasite groups I was in had cancer and did these
Yeah.
cleanses and actually somehow doing the cleanses the body could now like heal from the cancer. And so
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
just the parasites sort of taking over. It was like the body was constantly trying to work through that and it couldn't even get to healing like the tumor or whatever. So
And
that was a whole rabbit hole.
I'm of the mind now, because I just after working with parasites for so long, that
Hmm.
they're actually there to clean up dead tissue and
Right.
something that's already wrong and heavy metals within the body. Because if you do a heavy metal cleanse, the parasites don't come back.
Right. Right. For sure.
Because some people, they have to do it like every 6 months, and that tells me, okay, we're not getting to the root of the issue, we're just cleaning them up, but then your body's inviting them back. And
Right.
so when you switch your thinking on parasites instead of nature's the enemy, I need to keep nature out.
Yes.
Instead of, okay, why is my body inviting the parasites in? And then
Mm-hmm.
you address, okay, I have either dead tissue somewhere that needs like proper blood flow,
Mm-hmm.
or I have heavy metals that need to be cleaned up.
Right. So it's almost like in a way it could be more symbiotic with
Yeah.
them. Like they could be, if you keep them to a certain number, because we all have them, right, in our bodies all the
Mm-hmm.
time.
Yeah.
But I started drinking like water kefir and just really focusing on healing my gut. And now I don't have to do parasite cleanses anymore. And I don't even feel the crazy symptoms. But it did. It forced me to change my diet. It forced me to start thinking of, and even fear, because I had associated fear with the parasites. So like I took a whole class on fear and how to process it. And I looked at the parasites as like sort of like the messengers that like I was being too fearful, and like somehow they were correlated with that. So when I eliminated my fear of them and like my fear of just everything, like the world, my anxieties and stuff, the parasite stuff stopped, you know. But
Wow, that's really
I
interesting.
had cleansed a lot, like, so um but like I'm just not afraid of them anymore, right? And that was good. But you spend a year battling something and it does, it'll strike fear in you when you hear the
Oh
words.
yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
my youngest, he struggles with autism, and I
Mm-hmm.
noticed he would get parasites pretty easily,
Mm-hmm.
pinworms, and he knew the symptoms when they were coming. And usually most anti-parasitic herbs are actually really bitter, and
Right.
he won't take a lot of the stuff that I give him unless I promise it's sweet and it tastes good. And but he will actually ask for that one when they come. It's the only time he will ask for bitter herbs. He knows it works, and it'll just be one and done. And
That's interesting because I'm definitely on the spectrum and struggle with the parasites too. And I also struggle just with detoxing in general. Like I feel
yes,
like some people can cleanse like really quickly, but for me, it's like painful. It's really hard. It's like it messes with my emotional health and all of this stuff. And so that's interesting when you said that he's more prone to that, because I feel like maybe there is something to just like being a little bit slower, like with the detox,
yeah, yeah, that's an issue too. If things are putrefying in your guts and it's not being eliminated, yeah, I can see that attracting parasites for sure.
Right. And I went to this
You,
apothecary and she like had you like close your eyes and like touch pick an herb. And when I picked it, she was
really?
like, "Are you feeling bitterness, honey?" And
Oh,
it was like an extremely
wow.
bitter herb. And this was around the time I had started the parasite cleanse. So that's actually interesting that there was an association with the bitterness.
Ah, I hadn't heard of herbalists doing that method. That's interesting. I'd like to see that in action.
Right. Yeah, it was a part of like the fear class I took. So
Okay.
she was like having you basically make your own tincture based on your intuition, and she would
Huh.
kind of talk to you about the plant that you picked, but I was really hoping for like this pretty plant. And it was like, I mean, I don't remember what it was at this point. It's definitely bitter. It wasn't pretty at all. It was like the like boring looking and it smelled weird, and I was like, I guess this embodies what I'm going through right now. So, but it was fun.
Oh yeah, yeah. When it comes to mental health, I have to ask people what their goals are because, like, I might think, well, this is where I would want to be, but some people are like, no, I'm not ready for that. I have to ask them because, like, something like wormwood. Wormwood is not. It's super super bitter.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take just like one drop, usually I tell people just one drop a week, and it can actually bring up old trauma so that you can
Mm-hmm.
process it. But not everybody's ready to be dealing with all that kind of stuff and do that deeper work.
Right. That's interesting because there's definitely wormwood in that parasite thing. And it
Oh.
did bring up, I mean, that might be why I was having such a bad time. Like I would have like panic attacks and stuff from it. And a lot of anxiety, like kind of chaotic anxiety, like where I would just like curl up in a ball and just like want to scream. And a lot of times, especially even with like some of my autistic traits, I can like contain them, but like this was like I was just rocking back and forth. I was just like, this isn't good, so this is why I would contact
Oh,
my herbalist all the time. I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready for this, but I had an insane amount of childhood trauma, and so bringing up those wounds is harder for me. I've done more therapy now, so I feel like I would probably be better. But at that point, it was really hard.
yeah.
So it's definitely you want
Yeah,
to have
doing wormwood. No, that one is a tough one. I don't push that one on people, and it is good to be with a trauma therapist. I feel
mm-hmm,
like, but more than the other types of healing modalities, because
mm-hmm.
it's not enough to address. Okay, this happened to me. You actually have to learn how to process it and let it go.
Right, for sure. I've had such a, I guess, beautiful. I could say now been a beautiful journey with just with the herbs, with the homeopathy, with the therapy, with the meditation, like all of it combined. And I feel, like I'm more myself at this point. But it actually did take like each of these little things to help bring me into harmony, and where I can just face things and I'm not so afraid. I used to, if I had like if my breathing slowed down, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm having an asthma attack and I'm dying. And then that would give me an asthma attack. So it was like it's been such a journey for me, but I definitely believe in the power of plants, and I think that they're like our allies and they're here to work with us and help bring us back into like that natural state, like one more connected with like the earth vibration. Because with things like 5G and with all these sounds and the frequency, it pulls us out
Yeah.
of our natural vibration. Like if you go like lay in the woods and you're just listening to cicadas and there's running water and all, I feel like you don't really need so much of the plant medicine because you're
You
like
don't.
you're immersed in it. And so like it's taking care of you from the outside. But when we live in these cities and we lock ourselves in our apartments and we don't get any sun and there's no natural sounds, then now it's like we have to bring it in to our bodies. So I feel
It's
like that's
true.
where
It's
tinctures are
true.
really great. So yeah. So
Yeah, there's I love some of the old sayings on that. Like if you don't get enough sunshine, our ancestors would keep, dandelion on hand because or calendula, and it's to remember the sun is how they put it, but we now know it really helps with a lack of it's not so much it's when you're not getting enough sun exposure, really, because the body can produce vitamin D just from the fats that we store within our body,
mhm.
but we don't always release it or access it. And I suspect that that's what those flowers are actually doing, is helping us process the fat in our body to make that important vitamin D.
Right. And the dandelion already kind of looks like a sun. So I feel
Yeah,
like
it does.
just looking at it makes you remember, like maybe I need to go and get some sunlight while I drink this
There, yeah,
dandelion
yeah,
tea.
it is happy and cheery.
Yes, for sure. Let's see. Do you have any books that helps you while you were learning that you might be able to suggest for our listeners who want to look more deeply into herbalism?
Yeah, I have any I really love Matthew Wood's books, and that's who I take the bulk of my classes from.
Mm-hmm.
And but his stuff really is really advanced. Like
Uh-huh.
I have his pulse diagnostic books and things like that. So I mean, but if you just want to learn and do everyday things, I recommend David Hoffman's book. Um, it's the Complete Herbal book is what it's called. Herbs from A to Z,
Mm-hmm.
and that one it does get a little bit more in the formulas, but it's great for like you need to understand what ailment's going on, so it describes the processes that are going on, and it does get a little bit into choosing herbs. He doesn't really get into energetics, which is fine because that's kind of more advanced,
Mm-hmm.
and he also lets you know, don't take this herb while pregnant, don't do it while breastfeeding,
Right.
and with herbs, the reason why you don't want to take certain ones is because they'll induce an abortion, and that's the big
Right.
concern. We're not so concerned about like deformities or anything
Right.
like Western medicine.
For sure. Yeah, it might like relax the uterus or something too much to where.
And I recently just bought let's see, Matt, what's his name? Yeah, Matt Kaufman's book, The Herbal Medic. And that's because, you know, living on the sailboat, I eventually want to travel the world. And I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I really need to get better with basic first aid. Like, I'm good with the everyday stuff here, but whether something major happens that I've never dealt with before. And
Right.
man, he's got so many great herbal survival tips in there. That one was really great.
All
And
right.
I definitely I learned new things in there. And he's heavy on the formulas too, but I understand what he's saying. And that one, and then I had one other one on my mind. Oh, I bought Phyllis D. Light's book, Southern Folk Medicine. And so, if you're more interested in how the people up in the Appalachian Mountains practice, as opposed to traditional Western herbalism, which is what most books are actually on,
Mm-hmm.
I highly recommend her book because that one actually, instead of going by like the tri-dosha systems, it actually goes by your moon sign. And
Oh.
so, like, I, in both Vedic and Western charts, my moon sign is actually in Libra, so it's very airy, and that's,
Mm,
yeah, and I very much embody the airy constitution type.
right.
So, but and that really helps you with picking plants because they all have an element attached to them in Southern folk medicine.
That is fascinating. I definitely want to look more into that because I'm a Capricorn moon and I feel like it is kind of dominating, but I also have a stellium in the house with my moon. So it's like a lot of Capricorn, a lot of Earth.
Yeah, very earthy. Yeah,
So, but
I
I have air too, like with a lot of Aquarius stuff, but I would say I struggle more sometimes with the Earth energy because it just makes me, like hard to deal with. It makes me really kind of stubborn and set in my ways and
yeah.
harder to evolve or whatever. So that's definitely where my type A probably comes in.
Yeah, but we need earth people because they tend to be you know, they're doing more with their hands and we need people working with their hands and creating, well, because I always see like your beautiful embroidery and that's very earthy right there.
Right. And
You know,
I do like
you're
to do like
creating.
natural images and stuff. So that, I didn't think about that. That's really cool. So, yeah, I'm constantly creating new things. And other people will be like, "How are you doing this?" I'm like, "I don't know how you're not doing this because it's so natural for me to just constantly create, but then sometimes I don't want to create. That's where I like want to bring in more the Jupiter, right? Like sometimes I just want to have a good time and not be efficient and not be thinking about my next project. And that's where I would like maybe need some plants or something to help, you know, tone me down a little bit, or maybe add some like water to the hard earth and like moisturize it a little bit.
Yeah, you know, a couple thousand years ago, the all herbalists were also astrologers, and that's actually where
Mm-hmm.
astrology started. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's actually on my list. I want to take a class from Judith Hill. Actually, she has a whole school now. She's really expanding, but
Mm-hmm.
she's really a true master in that art and one of the few actually teaching that discipline in this country. So
Mm-hmm.
she teaches it from the traditional Western herbalism viewpoint instead of like Ayurveda or the other ones. And so
Right.
I feel her work's really valuable. And you know, she's older, so I got to get in there soon. But she likes simplifying things, which I really need when it comes to astrology. Because I
Right.
have a hard time with Western, and she does teach it from the viewpoint of Western. I
Mm-hmm.
Vedic is easier for me because there's not all those crazy lines going on.
Okay.
Like I can look at the chart and read it a little easier.
Okay.
Um, so, but she's come up with her own system to simplify things, and she's really like a big advocate for you should be able to just look at the chart and know what's going on. Like you can see something's going on with the spine, and you know to look there, and you know
Mm-hmm.
other such issues.
Right. I definitely haven't got to the health aspect of astrology, but I know that it goes really deep. And I have heard a little bit with like astrology being correlated with plants and in nature and like you should plant certain things around certain
Mm-hmm.
times and there was a lot of that when I was studying Steiner and his like biodynamic farming, and I was like, I had no idea.
He's really advanced. Not everybody can understand Steiner's work. Usually people start with Culpeper. That
Okay.
book has been that's the longest that book's been in print almost for the longest amount of time uninterrupted. The only other book with that kind of history is the Bible.
Okay.
And Culpeper, that book was printed in the 1600s, but he does associate the plants with the planets. And so when people want to start digging into that, they usually start with Culpeper, but his language is very old fashioned and he'll spend a lot of time looking up old words.
I love that though. I love like opening a book and taking notes and not knowing what they're talking about the whole, because that means I'm having to research and learn new things. If I'm reading a book and I know everything they're saying, I'm really bored by the first
Yeah.
chapters. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah,
that's
if the whole world thought the same way I did, I'd probably be pretty bored. I do need to be challenged a bit.
right. Yes, for sure. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we wrap it up?
Um, well, I mean, I do consultations.
Mhm.
People can go to my website, innersunherbals.com, and I don't know. I've been thinking a long time to actually change that name because people get so confused. It's Inner Sun is the archaic name for the third stomach chakra, because
Mhm.
that's where the sun and the heat from your body is. So
Right,
it was called the inner.
the
Yeah,
solar plexus. Yeah,
yeah,
that makes sense to me.
yeah. But
Okay.
they're like inner sun, what? And it's like confusing. So, but you can go to innersun.com and slash book now, and you can book an appointment with me right there. And I do everything through Zoom.
Okay, so you can work with anybody because we have listeners in 40 countries. So maybe
Oh
somebody
wow.
in a different country can message you too. So that's kind of cool. But
Yeah, yeah.
I'll put your link in the description so that they can find it easier. And
Oh, I had no idea your audience was so large.
it's not that it's large, it's just that we have, it's in a lot of places. So we have about like the same amount of listeners every time, but they're just really spread out. I think it's kind of a niche audience. So, it's like we have like one or two of us in each city.
Oh, that's
The
amazing.
world couldn't handle like all of us being in one place, I guess. So.
I had thought about that with, because some people are just more in tune to the earth and the way it works. And it does seem like we're very spread out, but I have wondered if God did that on purpose because we
Mhm.
need to spread our light in that area. Who else is going to do this work?
Right. It's like we're like holding the vibration for like our whole community or something. Just by
Yeah.
existing within that community and having the thoughts that we do, it affects like the collective, for that area.
Yeah.
So it's kind of
Yeah.
we're special. We're
That's right. Your audience is special too.
yes, we're all doing the good work. So all right. Thanks so much for doing this episode with me. I really appreciate you stepping up. When I had someone cancel, but it was just such a happy, sad thing. I was like, oh no, I'm gonna have to find somebody. But then it was just like, oh, there you are, and you were like ready for it, and it was so amazing. So,
It was divine timing.
all right, thank you so much, and thank you all for tuning in. Check us out next time on the Astral Hour.